for some of the folks that wanted to be on it that aren't today or couldn't make it, so they can go back and look at this. Let's see what my phone says. Okay, I think so we can be good stewards. Whoops. Hang on a second. Uh-oh. I just saw Alex deleted his call in, so hold on just a second. Who do I see that? So Alex's lesson. I thought I had it in here. Oh, Alex deleted it. Alex. Okay, we are going to get started. I'm going to unmute you for a second. I think you also can unmute yourself, but I want to make sure everybody can hear. Can everybody hear okay? Yes. Yes. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. First of all, I want to introduce Graham Cola. Did I say it right? He's going to be the trainer today. Some of you might know him. He's been at Fusion Labs for over 7 years. He's actually been out in the field training, and his big specialty is data mapping, data conversion, and he also helps Leslie in the support center. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Graham, and again, I want to remind you guys, we are recording this, so it will be archived on the user SharePoint, and also there'll be a link after this is over that will share the recording. And then if you have any questions, be sure to stop and ask them along the way. If you haven't used this program before, you can go up there where it says My Mood, and it will actually raise a hand. Or some of you, I know some people like to make their own sounds, and I'll look for those and stop Graham if he's in a trance. Also, he has a handout that you'll see underneath my name there where it'll say click here to download on building queries, the basics as well. So anyway, we're going to switch the screen over to Graham. So I'm going to put you guys back into Q&A mode, which means you can unmute yourself when you want to ask a question. Okay, everybody ready? Yes. Okay, here we go. Okay. I think he's sick on that. Okay. I'll do that. You know where it's at, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, Graham, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hello, everybody. All right, today we're going to be doing the very basics of queries. So if you've used them in the past, then we're probably going to be going over some things that you already know. Maybe towards the end, I'll get into some new stuff that you're not aware of. But so anyway, when you log into GE, you get to the query section. You're using this button here. This is our test system, so a lot of this stuff probably won't look very familiar to you unless you've seen it before. So this right here, this screen shows all the queries that have been created in the past. So when you create a query, they'll have multiple purposes. Sometimes you're just data mining, looking for specific records. Other times a query will be used for correspondence templates. So when you create one and save it, it'll show on this table.
Can we take a time out a minute, just make sure everybody is able to see the screen? Can you guys unmute yourself and tell us if you're able to see what Graham is showing you right now on the screen?
Yes.
I see it, but it looks terrible.
Yeah, I can see it too. I can't read it.
Okay, can you enlarge that at all, or like, let me see.
It's as big as it gets.
Is anybody else having trouble seeing it?
It's a little small.
Saying the resolution's too small. Is that on their computer or?
Yeah, this one says good as it's going to get.
Yeah, Jason, you might try the resolution. It's clear on our side.
I can't read it. That's going to be a problem.
Everybody's saying it's too small. So,
Okay.
can you go to another screen and let's see what that? I don't know why. How come we can see it on our screen and they can't?
I don't know. Maybe they're seeing it at a window.
I maximized it. It helped.
What's that?
I maximized it up here where it says Lisa Nally. There's a place where you can minimize and maximize, and that helped a lot.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Then you can click the magnifying glass, and there it goes. So mine's now in Amarillo.
Okay, hey, great, thank you. That's a good tip. I think I spend my life magnified, so I don't ever see anything small. So everybody got that now? Okay, that worked. Okay, thanks so much for that. I'm going to then butt out. Okay, good, thanks. All right, I'm going to let it go back to you. So it looks like you're able to see the notes that come up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So if you want GE up so you can follow along, that's fine.
Yeah, some people are asking that question. So yeah, certainly bring GE up if that will help you. I'm going to be silent.
Yeah, if you have the ability to follow along in your own version of GE, it'll probably help because the data will be familiar to you. Make more sense to you. All right, so this is the query screen. Shows all the saved queries. And a little description here, the focus area, which is the first item that we'll be going over. These custom checkboxes, they don't actually do anything on this screen. They're just for indication. When custom is checked, that is a query that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're going to be going over today. But we'll probably get into that more. I'll touch on it briefly at the end, but we'll get into it more in the more advanced query training session that I think we have planned for next month, maybe. And when the shared checkbox is checked, that means other people can modify the query. So I'm logged in right now as supervisor. And so if I create a new query, this is a screen that pops up initially. Here's where you would set custom and shared. So if I click that, then this query that I'm about to make is available for everybody. Unshared, then it's only for me. So cases where you might not want it to be shared would be if you're creating a query for correspondence purposes and you don't want anybody going in there and adding something or removing something, because it's the correspondence templates that are created in Word are very, very dependent and sensitive to the fields that make up. Okay, so first item on the list is focus areas. Let me give this a name first. All right. This area here is what we refer to as the focus. They're just kind of basic record types. We got grants, proposals, scholarships, web applications, and those all correspond to these areas in GE: grants, proposals, scholarships, web apps. So let's start with a grants focus area. And I've got a grant down here. All right. Let me know if you're having trouble seeing any of this. All right. So we've selected grants, we've given it a name, and we'll go over to the Fields tab here. This area is what we call focus areas. And each one of these contains various fields that come from a grant record in this case. And you can see, if you expand the grant area here, you can pretty much match them up one for one. Each one of these listed here is somewhere on a grant. And most of them are going to be on this particular tab of the grant. If we go to a different focus area, payments, and you change the tab on the grant to the payment tab, you can see that that's where all these fields come from. There's a couple of them that aren't. You can't see them here. We go back to the grant section. This is something if you're going to be using these, this is something that you might want to take note of. You'll see that on the grant details tab, there is no entered date. In fact, there's no entered date anywhere on the grant. That's something that's assigned as soon as a grant is saved for the first time, and so it only exists in a database. But you can still query it if you want to. And another one would be, let's see, where is it? Designation. We've got check designation over here and report designation over here. So this designation refers to the check designation. And if you absolutely have to have it say check designation, we can do that for you. This is just the way that it comes out by default. Also, a couple of IDs in here: fund ID, recipient ID, payee ID, and those you will also not see on the grant. Those are indexes that we use in the database. They're just sequentially assigned by the system. For normal purposes, you probably won't ever have to use those, but in cases like where you're trying to do some data cleanup or identify data issues, that can be helpful. All right, let's go back here for a second, and you'll notice in the field section, you got grant, payments, funds, characteristics, profiles, and workflows. Let's change this to proposals. Go back and take another look at that. So you see here, it's not grants anymore, it's proposal, but it's also got the same or similar focus areas.
Yeah.
So you'll see that each one of these sort of matches up with a tab on the respective record that the focus is about. Let's go back to grants, go back to fields. So this workflow here corresponds to the workflow tab here, profiles here, characteristics and characteristics, just like that. So each one of the focuses generally has those same focus areas available. Let's go ahead and start building a query. And I'm just going to pick some relatively random ones. You can select the fields that you want as part of your query by clicking the Add button here, or you can just double click on them over here and they automatically come off the list and go over it, become part of the query. Let's pick some other stuff. See, we want some characteristics in there. This code value here, characteristic name and the characteristic code value. The characteristic name refers to this section here on the characteristics tab. The code value would be this value here. There we go. And then you got the notes field here for this field over there. And the active flag is also another item that, let's go over here to the config real quick, refers to this checkbox. So if you want to find out in this query all the active characteristics, that's what you would use to do that. Okay, there we go. All right. Does anybody have any questions about that so far? No hands? All right. The next tab is filters. And you can filter on any of the fields in any of these areas, even if they're not part of the query. So let's go ahead and filter on grant number. And again, you just double click on them to bring them over into the filter window over here, or you can click the add button. First thing to point out is that you can have and or conditions for multiple filters. If I select grant number and let's see, fund number, and this button here is checked, then both of these have to be true. Whatever conditions I end up giving these, they both have to be true. If I click that, then it can be any one of them, or all of them. All right, so the condition is just a drop down of all the different relations that you can have with the field name. Between is, it's not just numerical. It can be alphabetic also. And not like and like are inclusive and exclusive conditions. Is null and is not null are basically essentially if you're looking for missing data, or if you're looking for only records that have data and you want to omit all the ones that don't, you would use is not null. But for this purpose, let's select equals. And start and end is kind of a vague way to name those columns, but it refers to if you were using a date. Let's go back and put a date in here too. Grant date. So if I wanted to find grants that are just during the year 2013, let's say that. So that would be the beginning of my range and the end of my range. And for the grant number, we'll put in, looking for a specific one here. Oh, it's because I'm using one. No, okay. Okay. So in the case where we're not using the condition between, the start column is just the field that you would fill out the filter on. So even though it's not really a start, it's kind of accepted that way, but that's the way it works. Let's take grant fund number out. I think. Let's change this to 2011 so that we can actually get the grant. Okay. So you can see that you can have multiple filters here. And generally, the more filters that you put in, it's going to narrow your search. So even though you could have potentially 50 different filter fields, it's probably going to end up not being what you're looking for. All right, so let's go up to the Sort tab. Now, unlike the Filter tab, the field that you sort on has to be part of your query. Since we're looking for only one, we don't really need a sort at this point. We'll work on that in a minute when we get to the next focus area. But let me show you just how it works. If we were looking for multiple grant numbers, let's select grant number, and then you got the option of sorting it ascending or descending. So it's pretty straightforward. Now the Results tab. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Nope. All right. So as soon as you click on the Results tab, you build your query, click on the Results tab, and it automatically runs the query for you and shows you the results. Now, because of the filter that we have on here, looking for only a specific grant number, and the date range that we put in matches the date that this grant was created, then that's the result we get. Now, let's go back to the Filter tab for a second and take these out. We'll leave the date in there and go back to the Results tab. And now what we're looking at is every grant that was created in 2011. Got a scroll bar over here where you can go down to the bottom. Let's make this a little bit bigger. All right, so on the Results tab here, you've got the ability to do some filtering and some sorting and some additional things that you could also do in these Filter and Sort tabs. Now, if you use the Filter and Sort tabs and you save this query, those filters that you build into the query will stay there. On the Results tab, if I want to find that one grant that we were just looking at, then I put a filter in here. Oh, I'm using somebody else's computer and their keys are all in the wrong place.
What are you trying to say?
So we put a filter in the Results table here, and we've got that grant that we were looking at before, where we had the filter built in here. Now it's gone. So we had the full set of grants in 2011, but now we've just narrowed it down to that one grant again. Now, and that's how all these fields work. Each one of these has that kind of capability. And you'll notice on the right and left sides here, you got the tiny little A and the little black arrow. The A is similar to the conditions that you would see on the Filter tab, but it's got a lot more. So if you don't necessarily need to have a filter built into your query, I prefer to use this table just because it's got so much more functionality than this Filter tab here. We've only got a small set of them available there. All right, in addition to that, let's take this filter out. We're back looking at our entire 2011 data set. These column headers up here can be dragged. You can move them anywhere you want, like this, and just drop them. So you can order them any way you want. But in addition to that, we've got this grouping feature where we can drag and drop them right up here in this area. And what it does, since I use grant type, now it's grouped all those grants from 2011 by grant type. So we've got, what's it look like here, seven different grant types. And you can expand each one of these areas to look at the grants that are part of that. So when we're looking at this subset of the larger set, we're looking at only grant type A's. Now, you can grab any of these columns and continue to group like this. So now what we've done is group them by grant type first and then grant status. So again, you can expand, let's find a good one. Expand the grant type and you'll see another grouping like this. That, Now what we're looking at are all the grants in 2011 that have a grant type of ER and have a status of process or request, sorry.
Does that make sense to everybody where we're at right now?
I have a question, if I
Okay.
may.
Okay.
This is Kathy in Amarillo, and I'm wondering that there are times when I would like to have another field, like the date, award date or something of that nature. Is it possible for us to add those, or is that something you have to do on the back end?
It really depends on where you're capturing that information in GE. So let's go look at the grant. That award date sounds something like a profile field that you might use. Is that right?
Well, actually, where yours says board date, that would be the one I would use. Board date.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If we go back to the field tab, I believe board date, we can find that under the main grant heading. And it's not there. So to answer your question, in that case, that would have to be something we would do. We'd have to go into the database, add that
I have
field
it in mind. So if I were to go and pull that in over there, then it would show up?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it wouldn't be uncommon for you to have different fields on your respective systems than what you're seeing here, because we have, or for a lot of you, we have already gone in and added some specialty fields for you. Especially, some of you might see an additional focus area instead of just these. You may have an additional focus area that's called something like custom fields, or it could be specific profiles or specific characteristics, or it could be really basically anything.
I saw another question come up about what version of GE we're using here.
This version is 4.1.0.5.
Is that the latest version, or?
This is the latest and greatest. Well, I think it's the latest one that is available for download.
Okay. And if they aren't sitting at this version, they can go to the user SharePoint and get the latest version.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And again, if you don't have access or password to the SharePoint, email gesupport@fusionlabs.net, and they will send that information to you so you can get the latest version.
That's right.
Hope that answered that question. And did we finish answering your question on the custom?
Yeah, the board date.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's no problem for us to add them. It's a very common request.
And
So,
if that's something they just send in to support
yeah,
again.
you just send a request to GE support, and we'll pick it up and go in there and add the field.
Okay.
So it's no problem at all. So back to the results tab. Does anybody else have any other questions at this point? Okay, so
Hey, Grant.
yeah.
Can you do this is Kathy from Bluegrass. Can you do the grant type and grant status again, how you connected the two? I missed that part.
Up here at the top?
Yes, I missed that part. I was taking notes.
Okay. All you do is you left click on them, and you can drag them around just like you drag anything else in Windows. So
I see.
yeah,
Okay.
So just put them. Once they're up there, you can't see this little message. But yeah, it's just you drop them right there. And that's what does it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hey, Barbara, we saw that you had a message show up, Barbara Brooks, but I didn't finish reading it. Can you unmute yourself so we can know your question? Or do the question again so I can see it? Yeah, I know. I don't know if she can hear me or not. We'll go on, maybe she'll send it there again.
Okay, so this, what we just did by dragging these columns up here, that's referred to as grouping. All right, so let's ungroup them. This area here, if you were to fill in a value for them, that's called the filter section. And additionally, you can click on the column header itself and sort the entire list by whatever column you want. And you can only sort by one column at a time, obviously. But so this just right here in this tiny little area of the results tab gives you as much and even more functionality as far as organizing the data than what you can do here on the filters and sort tab that are built in. So again, the reason that these filters are, these two tabs are here in the first place, considering that the results tab can do that anyway, is that if you want these filters and sorts to be built in and part of the query when you save it, that's how you do it here. Any filtering, grouping, or sorting that you do in the results table here, when you close the query and come back to it, those won't be there anymore. You have to redo them. But even so, it's a very powerful tool for organizing the data. And you'll notice over on the right side here, we've got these three links, clear filters. That's because you can have a filter in every single one of these if you wanted to. And sometimes the queries will be much larger than this. So you'll have 20 fields, 20 columns you're working with. And so it's just a convenience thing if you want to ungroup or unfilter the data, just clear filters right here. And that takes anything out of these fields up here that might be there. You've also got the print link. Click on that and it brings up your standard Windows print dialog. Works just like any other print dialog. And export, again, your standard Windows dialog box. And at the moment, we can only export to an Excel document. But you save it on your desktop and it gives you the ability to further manipulate the data if needed. Excuse me. So, anybody have any questions at this point? Nope. All right, let's go back to the Info tab and change the focus area. And we'll go down to scholarships. Now, this is not, if you're familiar with quick scholarships, this is not quick scholarships. I'm sorry, somebody have a question?
Can you hear us?
You're kind of breaking up. I'm hearing every third word, I think.
Okay, just from the Jewish Community Foundation, we just had a question about that we had typed in about the conditions. If there's one for contains and one for one of.
Right. Oh, let's go back.
Did everybody hear her question?
No.
Okay, can you repeat her question, what she's looking at, Grant, please?
You had a question about the filter tab here or the filter tab on the results table?
The first one. The first one.
This one here? Okay. And what was the question?
So for the, from that drop-down menu, is there one for contains and one for one of?
I'm sorry, you broke up right there at the critical moment. Is there one for what?
Wrote it in the chat. You're looking for conditions of contain or one of.
Oh, no. This is all we've got here. The results tab may have something like that.
Can you add it?
I can't add it. That would be a program change. I can manipulate data all day long, but I can't change the program code, unfortunately.
But that is a good thing to talk with the executive committee, because that's what they bring to us, our program changes or upgrades. So if there's several of you that are needing what she's asking, get that to Alex. I think Alex is actually on the call as well, because that's what we look to that user group to bring us, those kind of program changes. So someone might get together there with Alex and them.
And it doesn't look like it's got what you're asking for here either. This would maybe do it, but again, this condition here is going to be out of the scope of this training session. Regular expressions are kind of cryptic strings of characters that show that basically define how you want data to be formatted. And if you're interested in learning about regular expressions, you can just Google it because it's a pretty common term, and I'm sure that you'll find a whole lot of information about it. Okay, let's go back here and change it to scholarships. So again, this scholarships is referring to the full scholarship module here. Open up one of these. Go here. Already got it. And again, on the Fields tab for scholarships, got all the similar focus areas as the other groups, except you'll notice we've got this one here, contributions EFC. Now these, you won't actually find them listed like this on the scholarship record itself, but these come from, go to business rules, records, scholarships. It's referring to these fields here, and these are set up by the users. So it could be likely on your system, if you've got them at all, they're not going to be the same as what you're seeing here. But you do have the ability to define these however you like. And if you select literal one, in this case it should be other grants, and I select that as part of my query, that's where that information is going to be coming from. So don't kill yourself trying to find it on the scholarship record because it's not there. So I just want to point that out. And so that's basically the process of how you build non-custom queries. Now, custom query, oh, one more thing I want to go over here. Let me go back and rebuild my grant query real quick. Okay, one last thing. You see this show SQL link right up here. And if you're interested in learning SQL, or if you know SQL, this is how you would access the actual code for the query that you just built. So if you know how to write this yourself, you can certainly do that. But this is just kind of make it more user-friendly for you to build those. But you can copy and paste that and modify it however you want. But you notice it's grayed out, so I can't type anything in here at the moment. If I go back to the Info tab and check this custom box, it's going to bring up a message. Once this query is flagged as custom, you will not be able to revert to a managed query. Are you sure you want to do that? And what it's saying is, all these fields that we've got selected for our query now, and we have all these other fields as options, if we select custom, notice all three of those tabs go away, and we're left with only the Info tab and the Results tab. And now, this window here is editable. So it's beyond the scope of what we're going to go over today, but if you are so inclined and have knowledge of SQL, you can come in here and write your own queries. And like I said, when we change it to custom, we pretty much lost the original query. So this action is not recommended. Yeah. So there's your warning message. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Then the last topic is going to be about best practices and some quirky things about queries themselves. Sometimes you will find duplicates in the results list. Let me see if I can generate one of those. It may already be in here. Oh, we've got a filter. Oh, no filter. Oh, wrong grant type. There we go. Oh, I forgot to mention you can also open up the records directly from the results list. So you'll see this grant has 4 payments, single fund. Okay, yeah, it's got a void and reissue. Okay, so this is a relatively simple query that we're working with only 6 fields in it. But as your queries become more and more complex, meaning more and more fields, you'll sometimes see cases where grants like this, where it's got multiple payments, or if it has multiple funds, or maybe if you have characteristics or profiles as part of your query over here, it can start causing duplicate records to be brought into the results. So if you're using a query for correspondence purposes and it's bringing back duplicates, that can be a problem, because sometimes you'll end up with a whole lot more copies than you need. And sometimes in that case, you'll have to contact support, and we'll have to go in and change the query to a custom query so that we can prevent the duplicate records from coming over. And it's not uncommon to do that. So don't think you're doing something wrong or you don't know how to build queries, but just know that the more complex they get, the more likely they are to bring back duplicate records. And it's not that the data is incorrect, it's just the way that SQL interprets records that have multiple payments or multiple funds, or maybe 2 of the same profile or 2 of the same characteristic. And that reminds me, let's go back to the fields, and I'll show you how to bring a characteristic in as part of the query. So here we are on the characteristics tab looking at the grant itself. We've got the 3 characteristics and 3 values for them. So we go to the fields tab on the query, expand the characteristics, and again, we're looking for, you can go ahead and get the name and the code value and see the results. And you'll see, like I said before, the name column corresponds to this characteristic column. Code value corresponds to this code column here. So I just wanted to point out that if you're looking for a specific characteristic, it's not going to be listed in here as, say, region. You're not going to see a field in here called region anymore. You're not going to see one called study area. So the way you would get those values is through the characteristics name field and the characteristic code value field. So this is a case where if you wanted fund region as a selectable field without having to go through this method of getting it, then you can call GE Support or send us an email, and we can add characteristics or profiles, workflow, tasks, and all that. Pretty much anything that you can see on the grant record on any of these tabs, we can add it to the query as an available field for you. But what we're looking at here is just the standard default fields that come along with GE. And one other thing, if you're using queries for correspondence purposes, there is a limitation in Microsoft Word of 56 fields. I don't know what kind of correspondence you would need that has more than 56 fields, but it has come up in the past, so I want you to be aware that if you're planning on using more than 56 for a correspondence template, I'm sorry, but Microsoft will not allow that. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well, if nobody has any questions, oh, I heard that. Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, so we had a question. You had mentioned the issue of
breaking up again. I'm sorry.
You mentioned the issue of duplication. For example, when a record has multiple payments,
Yes.
decrease duplication. So what is it that we can do to solve that?
In some cases, it's just the complexity of the query. I mean, it's a good idea to have. I mean, in an ideal world, you have one query for each correspondence template that you would have, so that the query itself doesn't end up having fields in it that are not used on one template but are used on another. Because you can in practice use one query for multiple templates, but as far as getting duplicates out, if you've already pared it down to exactly what you need and nothing more, then in a lot of cases we would have to go in there and do some modifications in the database itself to get the data the way that you need it. It's just a limitation of the way that the structures in the database that control all of these fields, the way that those are built, just sometimes bring back duplicates. And it's kind of just the nature of the way Microsoft SQL works.
Hey, Graham.
And in order to get in order to get around that, sometimes we have to go in there and do a little bit of trickery. But that's also not uncommon. We get calls like that all the time.
We've had a lot of calls with you guys about it. I'm just wondering, for example, if there's a grant that has 5 payments, it's easier for us to set it all up in one grant record and have all the correspondence go through that record. But we do have this ongoing issue of duplication with the correspondence. So, I mean, is there like an alternative? Is it better to create 5 different records and somehow like batch or group those records? I'm just wondering what everyone else is kind of doing for that, because we definitely have a lot of issues with duplication that we've been working with to support us.
I would have to see the specific case in order to give you a real answer about how to correct that, because it is possible in some cases to correct it without having to make it custom, but honestly, I'd have to actually put my eyes on it and to be able to give you an answer on that, because every query is different. There's not a cover-all answer for duplications. Kind of a little bit of detective work has to go into it.
So can they just email you then?
Yeah, you can just email GE support, and we can take a look at it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
Yes, Graham, this is Kathy again in Amarillo. I'm wondering if you have a set amount of fields that will cause those duplications. Does it cut off at like 6 or 8?
You mean as far as the maximum number of duplicate records that will be created?
No, you said that it usually, when you have the more fields you have, the more apt you are to have those duplications. So I'm wondering if there's a minimum that you need to keep those fields to in order to keep that from happening.
Yeah, it's sometimes the duplications are, like I said, because of the way that the database structures are built that control all these different fields in the different focus areas. Sometimes it's that, and other times there's certain fields that, like payment number. If you have a grant that has multiple payments and you're bringing back payment number, then obviously each one of the payments is going to have a unique number to it. And so in that case, it's not really a duplicate because the payment number is going to be unique for each one of the records that it brings back. And so if you pair that, like in a case where you have multiple payments on a grant and multiple funds, so you have 2 payments coming from 2 funds. The way SQL sometimes looks at that, it'll interpret it as 4 records because it basically tries to mix and match all of the different unique fields so that it covers every base. And in those kinds of cases, that's where we would have to go in and do some detective work and work our magic in the database to get the duplicates out. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, again, so there's certain fields in here namely the payment information and fund information can cause what you're talking about if you've got multiple payments and multiple funds, especially in that case.
Well.
Hey,
that was nice.
Intermission. Okay. Any other questions? All right. And one last thing I would like to point out is if you've had a chance to look at the handout that goes along with this.
And a reminder, you can download it there to the left-hand screen. I think there's a link you can click on and download the handout.
Yep. So if you look at that sheet at the very bottom, for those of you who are intrepid, I found a nice beginner's tutorial for SQL that pretty much starts at the very basics, and it will help you understand what all this stuff here is. So in the case of, if you do have a custom query, like I showed you before, then you lose all these fields and filters and sort tabs, and so you're only left with the option of modifying this code directly. And so for custom queries, a lot of times we'll have a date range or something like that, and if you need to find out how to modify that, this little link at the bottom of the handout page, there is a topic in there that'll show you how to do some simple modifications like that. But it's a really good place to start if you're interested in knowing more about SQL.
Definitely. Thanks.
I'm being directed.
Where there'll be, Jason's got a question. Will there be a save as function?
Well, a save as function for the query would be right up here, just like any other grant or proposal record.
Jason, give me a nod or a yes if that answers your question. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I was going to go back to AnyMeeting, the main screen.
Oh, AnyMeeting.
If you're done there.
I believe I'm done unless
Okay.
anybody else has any questions.
Does anybody have any more questions? I see I've got a list of questions. Let's see, did we ever answer Barbara's questions from Pittsburgh? Are there any plans to add or statements to the filter or the query?
Yes, let's go back over that part. Those are actually right here. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's only written to be, see if I can get this out right where it actually makes sense to somebody. It's either all or all and. You can't have mixtures of and or in the same query at this point. I don't know if there are plans to change that in the future, but that's how it is right now.
All right, let's see. Jason, did we answer that? That was the add save as function to the query. You just went through that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then Janice says next time we use GoToMeeting or another webinar, the video and audio is not well for training. Janice, we don't have another system at the moment. It might be, we'll just have to figure out audio, and you guys can put that if there was a problem where you couldn't hear things, let me know. Let's see, is that only on the new version? Did you answer that question?
Yeah, Jason, your question about is that only on the new version? What were you referring to there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. That is on, trying to think back years ago. I believe it's always been on there. So, and I'm pretty sure that all of you are on a version high enough so that you should all have save and close. If somehow in the past it wasn't there and I'm mistaken.
All right, I'll go back through here and make sure that we have addressed these questions. Also, you will get a survey after this is over, and if there are things you want to note on that survey, do. We won't share the names with those surveys. We'll end up putting it in a summary, because each time we want to get better at this. There's been this question of why we've limited it to 25 foundations. One is you can see there's a lot of questions that come from all over the board. The one thing we know about foundations is you all don't do anything the same. You have similar things, but everything has to do with your business practices. So when we're trying to teach a general webinar, it's kind of hard to go through those basics without getting into each particular foundation's information. So I think by limiting it to 25, we can at least try to get all these questions answered as much as possible.
The save and copy, that is fairly new. It's always had a save button, but I know what you're talking about now, the little black drop down that gives you different kinds of saving options. That is new. But as far as being able to save the queries, that's always been part of it.
Let's see, offer screenshots. You should be able to do that. We will have this recorded with the screenshots that he has done from this. And then also, okay. There is a link to the recording. It takes a few minutes for it to load into the content library, but you will find it then in this AnyMeeting that you have access to, and I will also send you all the link to this recording, since I know all of the ones that have registered. So the next webinar will be April 24th, and it's actually going to be on Building Queries Expanded. So I don't know if you want to get into a little detail what that'll be about. No, you don't? Okay. You'll end up seeing the overview. We'll get that sent out to everybody again as well. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy day, and hopefully you at least gathered something you can use out of today's webinar. But again, if you'll take time after this is over to send us a survey, that would be great. We want to continue to try getting as good as we can and as helpful to you all as possible. So thank you, and have a great day. We're going to end this right about on time. I know some of it is 5 o'clock your time, so go home. Bye.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you.